Welcome to Just Rest, burnout tips for everyday radicals who are tired but not giving up. I'm your host, Nicole Havelka, bringing you tips and inspiration to help you feel seen and supported on your radical rest journey. Let's go. Hey, Rest Rebels. I am so excited for this episode of Just Rest, burnout tips for everyday radicals, because do you know who I have in the studio? I have my friend and radical joy coach, Jordan Maney, and you are going to be over the moon about her in the same way that I am. I'm going to give you a little bio about her, but I want to give you the funny little story about our origin story, which I'm not sure if you remember or not, Jordan, which is that I first heard Jordan on a podcast. I heard her on our mutual friend, Becky Mollenkamp's podcast, Feminist Founders. And I was listening along and having a good time. And then I was like, why don't I know this fine human? We agree on so many things. We have so many overlapping parts of our story. I must get to know her. And I had that thought. And then, of course, the podcast ends and, one moves on, and it may have been in the back of my head. And then I swear it was no more than 2 weeks later. And she showed up at a online networking gathering that I was at. And I was fangirling in the stupid Zoom room. And I was like, I'm a fangirl. And then Jordan is so nice to me and said, hey, do you want to have a little tea? Meaning, we live in different places. So it's tea over Zoom. But we had a little conversation and that's all she wrote. But anyway, let me tell you about Jordan, not just about how I found this lovely human. Jordan is the Radical Joy Coach, TM, creator of the Rest Lab. Through her facilitation and coaching, she helps people who give a damn, aka bleeding hearts, probably the people who are listening to this podcast, learn the radical presence of rest so they can reclaim their joy, I'm here for it, and sustain their advocacy. She's been featured in New York Magazine, Yahoo. I don't know what ATTN is. What is that, Jordan?
I think it's just attention. I think call it
attention. Attention. Oprah Magazine and Martha Stewart Living. You can find her resting with friends, family, and her sassy pup Duchess in San Antonio, Texas. Welcome, Jordan. Is there anything else you would add to either that story or your bio?
That was wonderful. I love how you retold that story about you fangirling. You were not fangirling. You were simply excited in the comments, which made me excited. So no fangirling. It was just a really fun time getting Becky Mollenkamp is so great at pulling people together. But it's just really nice to be able to find someone who understands what it is that we're both trying to do, how we're trying to help people. And it was just, it was lovely.
It was lovely. I think maybe the fangirling was internal and I was keeping it, kind of
it's not
contained. I don't know.
It didn't feel like that for me.
It didn't feel like fangirl. It wasn't. It was very contained, but I was so excited. You're right. I was very excited. But fangirling sounds funnier, so we'll roll with that. Now that we're going to head into the discussion part of our conversation, we're going to talk about some really amazing concepts, I think, or introduce those of you maybe who haven't had the chance to explore this idea of rest as an act of resistance. Jordan and I, who love to talk about this ad nauseum, are going to talk about that for you today and hopefully give you some ideas about that. But first, I want to introduce a little bit more deeply, get Jordan's story kind of in the mix here. So before getting to the rest of those questions, would you just pause with me and take a deep breath before we get started, Jordan? And anyone else who might be listening, Rest Rebels, pause, take a breath. You could use it too. So we're going to do that for a second. And exhale. See, I feel so much better now. One little breath. That's all it takes. So, Jordan, I would love to hear a little bit more about you and your journey into getting into being a rest coach. So on your website, I'm so intrigued. You talk about being in therapy in your 20s, and your therapist asked you what you needed, and you didn't know how to answer it. So what's transformation did that spark in you? Yeah.
It was crazy because I felt like I had steam coming out of my ears because even she was kind of like, okay, we're going to walk that back and try something else. Because if you are unfamiliar with me, I'm a chatty Cathy. So the fact that I was just like stunned into silence was interesting because I had never thought of myself in that way before. And I think the transformation that it really kind of brought together with everything that had happened before, I had a really everybody has a turbulent 20s, but mental health was just kind of like in flux a lot. And I didn't have the framework for dealing with that. I grew up a preacher's kid. And so I understood like if something spiritually is off, here are the tools that you go for. But if something mentally is off, I did not know. I didn't have a toolkit for that. And so when asked that question, what do you like? What is it that you need? That type of thing. I don't think I'd ever answered that question for myself before. And I didn't meet it in shame, but kind of, again, stunned because I realized, oh, I've never asked myself that before. I don't know if anyone has asked me that before. So what do I want? What do I need? How do I need to take care of myself? What type of care would I like to receive? What feels like restful for me? And that kind of started that introspection and self-inquiry that I try and lay as a foundation for people who work with me as well to figure out, hey, what is it that you want? What is it that you're trying to do? What type of care do you need in this next chapter, in this next era? And what does that look like for you?
Were you working as a wedding planner then? Was that what you were doing?
Working sounds like lovely. I think I was like surviving as a
Right. That might be the best one can do at wedding planning is surviving it.
If you want to talk about normalizing burnout, my God, I think I was just trying to just stay stable while doing a job that kind of was a codependent relationship where I was constantly kind of being the emotional balance for other people, tending to the emotional needs of other folks, while also like the logistical needs, because it's all intertwined with what like any milestone event, but particularly with weddings. And I was just exhausted by it, but I also didn't know what else to do but this thing. So yeah, I was working/surviving as a wedding planner at the time. And so learning how to be the balance for people, it creates some codependency. It can create some codependency.
Yeah, you're that person they depend on for almost everything, both sort of the emotional support if someone's having a meltdown, whether it's the bridegrooms or the family, someone in the family, like you're dealing with that heavy duty emotional labor. Plus, everybody's asking you, right, for where do you want the hors d'oeuvres? Where do you like blah blah blah? Which way is the bride going to walk in? Which right?
And it is the only and likely closest and likely only glimpse I've got into what motherhood must be like. It's constant, like the constant pulling of, I don't know what to do. Can you tell me what to do? I need this. And I'm just, I would have to physically prepare myself for wedding week, not just the day of. Because usually by Wednesday is when everybody kind of collectively forgets their adults.
Yeah.
Completely forgets that, I know how to do things. And I say that with love and appreciation because I'm so grateful for the clients that I got. I will never say anything negative about them. I'm so grateful for them. And the lessons I learned specifically from some of the ones that were a little more particular. But yeah, it can be really difficult. It's a lot of emotional labor. And I think at that time, I was so used to serving in that way that I didn't know how to be of service to myself.
Yeah. I mean, and that's actually what I was just thinking. I'm like, this is a place where you have to be, again, true of any event planning, but especially weddings, where you really have to be attentive to other people's needs. And that's a really convenient way to not pay any attention to your own. And so no wonder when your therapist asked you, do you have any needs? You couldn't possibly answer that question. And for that matter, even now, if people ask me what my needs, depending on the moment, I have trouble answering that question. And like you, I've been on that journey for a long time now.
Yeah.
And I've been, not only in the last several years that I've also been a rest/burnout recovery coach, but even before that, as someone who practices yoga and meditation, and having teachers ask that question. I have one very close mentor and teacher who asked a group of her Wednesday night class that every single week. And this was a class of advanced students. Most of us had been practicing for a decade or two. Many of them were teachers. And every single week she'd say, so, I have a plan, but, what do you all need tonight? And it would almost, a group of 15 people or more would be crickets. Unless it was, there's kind of a thing with my shoulder, like something more benign like that. But like articulating what we need was extremely difficult. And I've taken that page out of Marsha's book because I ask it knowing people can't answer it. But I feel like the more we ask it of people, the better we're going to get at thinking about it even if you don't have an answer for me today, you'll have an answer a month, a year from now, maybe.
Yeah. I had that happen with a conference I spoke at in 2023, I think it was. I'd always send like a follow-up email to attendees of like, hey, how can I support you? What is it that I can do to support you and you getting better rest, joy, and care in your life? And, I get little responses. Some people want to work with me or interested, get on the email list. That's, the usual. A year later, in 2024, I get an email from one of the attendees who was like, I couldn't answer this question, but I want to tell you what like those 90 minutes did for me. This is how my year changed. And I think about that from time to time of just sometimes, especially in this work, you don't have the immediate answer, but it lays the foundation for something to change. In the same way, when the therapist asked me the question of like, what do you want? What do you like? What do you need? I didn't have the answer then, but it did lay a foundation to be like, okay, let's dive deeper into this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did that all change for you then? Eventually then you decided to stop taking your lovely but high maintenance clients, being a wedding planner.
Can I tell you what it really
transition. Was? Yeah, please. This is an honest and safe space. You know that.
It took an entire pandemic to like break me of that. December 2018, I have the worst wedding experience I've ever had. I will never talk negatively about that client, but that experience was bad for them and it was bad for me. And it really shook my belief in myself. And like, can I do that? But then 2019, I have the greatest wedding season. Everything goes off without a hitch. All of my clients are super happy, but I'm not happy. And so I know as 2019 is like winding down, I just have this feeling of kind of like retreat of like, I just kind of need to kind of go within myself for a little bit. And then 2020 bustles around the corner. The week before like the first wedding of the season for me, all of the pandemic stuff just hits at once. It took that shutting down the industry and clearing my calendar for me to be, and the kind of the not the urgency, but the fear of, we don't know what's about to happen. We don't know what's going on. There's so much information coming at us at once. But it took that place for me to finally kind of allow myself to answer that question of, it's not this. I don't want it to be this. Not only does it not make me happy, I feel like my body is breaking down. I feel like I am constantly in a state of high cortisol and stress. I feel like I can never take a moment to myself, that I'm always reacting, always responding to something. And I think having the time away from weddings allowed me to play with the things that truly, really mattered to me, that lit me up. And that was it was a transformative year for everyone, but professionally, it was really transformative because I didn't know what I could do alternatively before this. But then I started to be like, can I do something sort of over in this realm? And I think beforehand, as silly as this is about to sound, I think before the pandemic, I was looking for a permission slip from someone else to tell me that I could. And then with the pandemic, I was like, might as well to everything else. Everything is going wild outside. I might as well. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
kind of what that transformation was.
Yeah. I mean, the pandemic did that for a lot of people in lockdown, where they suddenly had the space to think about, well, if not this, then what? Because it forced them off the hamster wheel. I mean, I know tons of people that changed careers in that pivot, or who were like, one person I'm thinking of in particular who had been a wait person for a really long time and was good at it and made decent money even at it, had one of those sort of rare jobs, but then was like, but this isn't what I want to do, and went back to school to get a master's degree in that time. Any sort of big pause in the world like that, like, fosters that kind of thinking for sure.
It forces reflection where you cannot avoid or deny it anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I had already started my business before lockdown, but it created this huge space for reflecting on so many levels about what I wanted to do and where I wanted to head. And I don't think that this trajectory I'm on, and we're going to talk a lot more about this in a few minutes, this trajectory that I'm on around rest as resistance, as a radical act, would have happened in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Had it not been for pandemic lockdown, because I had the space and the universe was forcing me to confront and think about things like racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, toxic capitalism in ways that I hadn't had to think about them before as a relatively comfortable white person, even someone who prior to that was committed to working against those things. But it forced me to think about that and I had the space to integrate it into the business in a different way. And I am infinitely grateful for that very uncomfortable, but very fruitful moment in history.
I think 2020, I mean, I know so many people who got divorced. I know so many people who made these kind of big disruptive changes in that year. And for me, it clarified what was obvious to everybody else, but to me, I feel like I'm always the last one to get the message. I was a wedding planner, yes, but the specific way that I showed up in the industry was choosing to highlight the couples the industry chose to ignore, like disabled couples, queer couples. I was the only wedding planner in the city of San Antonio, the 7th largest city in the country. I was the only wedding planner in my city to market to and really affirm queer couples. I had couples come to me who were like, oh, I went to such and such planner, and they said that they could plan my reception, but they wouldn't be able to attend my ceremony for religious reasons. What does that even? It's okay to take your money, but not to. Anyways, don't get me started. But I'd always cared about justice. I've always cared about inclusivity. I've always cared about equity. I look back and I still have papers and things that I wrote from 5th grade. And I was talking about some of these things. That's always been a through line. And so with the shift away from live events just died. And they were like, okay. With the shift away from that, I was able to talk about those things in a way that I hadn't beforehand, but it's always been there. And so talking about rest as a radical act, as an act of resistance, that through line was there as well. And I just hadn't seen it yet.
As we dive in, is there a particular spiritual or religious background to your rest practices, and or are there some bad habits you learned from that, especially as a preacher's kid? And there is enormous pressure on preacher's kids to behave in certain ways in the church, which may have been enforced by your parents, but it comes from other people as well. So it's not even just from them, even if your parents are relatively loose about letting you be a kid,
Yeah. Nicole, I'm about to say it's the wildest thing that has ever left my lips.
Go for it.
Before. Have you ever watched a cult documentary and then there's the person who's not the cult leader, but the second in command who just the enforcer?
Yeah.
That's my head. So my parents were never my parents were
Your head is the enforcer.
My head
The
is
chief
enforcer.
operating officer of the cult. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
the chief cult operating officer, the CCOO. My parents were never particularly like super strict or anything. They made their boundaries very clear. They made their rules very clear. I was the one in here that I was like, that's nice. I'm going to take it 3,000 steps further and be even more all or nothing thinking, be even more strict and stringent and like really hard on myself. And so some of that was like, yes, the expectations of others, not necessarily my parents, but just other people in the congregation who were like, well, you need to be acting like this, or you should be showing up this way. And some of that was also me like running with that in a direction that wasn't really healthy for me. So a lot of the times, and it's so funny that you mentioned this because this year has been me working on this book. And this is like the first page of the book is talking about Sunday is meant to be a day of rest, but I did not grow up knowing that. It was like, you got to get up early, you got to get dressed, maybe have breakfast, but more than likely, probably not because you got to get to Sunday school, then church. There's probably a service after that that you need to attend to. Don't forget that you need to do something Tuesday night or Wednesday night to help prep for Sunday. There might be an event on Saturday. Like, it was not a day that I ever felt like particularly restful. And I think coming from the unique experience of my dad being both a chaplain in the army and being Baptist and it being a part of the greater institution of the Black church, there is this habit of I'm going to just keep going until there's nothing left. And my value lies in the work that I can do and the labor that I can provide other people. And that if I'm always moving and if I'm always doing something and if I'm always working in collaboration with the Holy Spirit and furthering the kingdom, if I'm always going, I will earn my reward in heaven. And as a kid, I was like, I'm tired and kind of seeing that legacy through the lens of a lot of like mothers of the church, a lot of older Black women who volunteered to clean the church, who volunteered to buy snacks for fellowship after church, who volunteered to get all types of supplies for kids, children's church, vacation Bible school, all those types of things. There's so much labor being done and so little acknowledgement of that labor. And again, it was never, I feel like my dad was always pretty good about acknowledging that, but we were just around so many other people who just didn't. So I picked up a lot of habits around like giving enthusiastically without question, around your own capacity, around performing. Again, I don't think that's something that my parents put on me, but the enforcer was like perfection. You have to be the best. You have to have memorized more than other people. You have to show up to do more, to do like youth group and Bible study and choir. You have to be this, not necessarily this embodiment, but this image that spiritually burned me out pretty bad at a pretty young age. And it got me in the habit of not asking, what do I need?
Mm-hmm.
How do I feel? What's going on? But more kind of, okay, so what do I have to do? What's the next thing that I have to do to make sure everyone believes this image that I'm trying to project? And I think that's like what the biggest one was, the performance of feeling like I had to perform. I think it's the idea that like labor, but no rest, which is antithetical to what's actually in the Bible about. We talked about this, about Sabbath and rest. And also this very gendered idea of what labor is valued and what labor isn't. And the story, I don't know if this ever hit you. I'm sure it did because you're also a woman in ministry, but like the story of Martha and Mary, like when Jesus showed up and how I remember just hearing it the first time and it was like, oh, Mary's sitting like sitting at his feet. And it's like, she's being fully present. And Martha is the one making sure that everybody's fed
Right.
Everybody's like comfortable. Everybody's having a good time. The space is clear. That's an important job. But the way that I first interacted with that story, it was like as if Martha was doing something wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like, yeah, Mary's able to be present because Martha's back there cooking.
Correct.
So like those types of gendered ideas around labor and rest, I think those kind of informed my understanding and relationship to rest in a way that I'm still unlearning.
Yeah. Poor Martha gets vilified often. And you're like, really? Because that's just what happens. Who's going to make dinner? If not, they're going to be wondering where dinner is an hour later. Is it really okay for her to just sit and listen too? I mean, we don't know. We don't know the conversations that were happening around that.
Yeah.
But there's anyway, it's more, I think it's a more subtle story than that. And we don't often, we bypass that.
Yeah. 12 probably funky guys show up to, okay, let's be honest. It is not well ventilated in here. I'm sure they're hungry. It's probably hot outside. And it's getting to that time where you're close to mealtime. And you want me to what? Not like someone has to do the work of creating like the space, right? Yeah. Someone has to be the host. But then the way that story was always told to me was like as if she was just so busy trying to make this space that she couldn't be present and she didn't really know what she was there for. And like how not evil of her, but like how sinful of her to lose context of the importance. And it's just like, yeah, but if you didn't have people like that, if you didn't have someone who was creating the space, you wouldn't be able to be present.
Right. Totally. I mean, and those are those church mothers you were just talking about who give enormous amounts of time and money often too, and time, aka free labor, to make those things happen. And it often goes unappreciated and unacknowledged. And maybe people don't even thank them very often for what they're doing to make all that happen. Until they're complaining that they're not doing it right or something like that, right?
Or they're not there anymore to do it. And it's like, where did everybody go? And I was like, well.
I know it's very common for those folks to get sick or just at some point, I'm physically not able to do it anymore because I'm 80 years old or whatever the case may be.
Stop asking me. And that's somebody else in here.
80 is not an exaggeration. And then that event or that thing that used to happen just falls apart. And it's not accidental that it's almost all women that are doing. That's not always the case, but it's probably 90% of the time is the case that it's a woman who's been keeping this thing up. And then you're like, we just need to let it go. Like it just has to be whatever that thing is, that dinner, that vacation Bible school, or that whatever, just has to drop. And this happens in all kinds of organizations, not just church, but
exactly.
It's a really good example of how that plays out. It's a really good example. This question that we're exploring is a great segue into the rest of our conversation. So I pulled out an article that I've used for a number of years now, and I'll link this in the show notes. It's Tima Oken's article, The Habits of White Supremacy, or a White Supremacy Culture. And in it, they name about 15 habits. And we'd be here all night and you all would be listening for 10 hours or something if we did all 15. And so I picked very painfully, it was painful. I picked 3/4. I put 2 of them on one line that I thought we could probably tackle together. So we have these 3 ideas, but the one I listed, and I sort of am open to what order we go in, but I thought that the perfectionism, which is one of those, is really pertinent to kind of the threads in the stories that we were just telling. That what is it, first of all? Why is it toxic? Why is it a part of white supremacy culture, first of all? And then what does that have to do with rest and all of that? So anyway, that was a very non-specific question to get us to talk about perfectionism. What is that and why does it so much have us by the throat, I feel like, a lot of times? Weddings are a good example about that. Any church dinner is an excellent example of that. Where are you on perfectionism?
I think perfectionism, specifically in like a religious context, is tied to purity. which ultimately is tied to worthiness. And so I think like the amount of, military kids, we moved around a lot. I didn't understand this when my sisters were in high school because I was still in elementary school. But we went from a school that was pretty diverse, and they went to a high school that was like majority white in Virginia. And at the time, heroin chic was like very much all the rage. The amount of girls who had eating disorders that they encountered that they didn't have beforehand, that they didn't have that experience beforehand. And I remember making a joke to my sister when I was like 6 years old that, oh man, if I threw up, I'd probably lose a little weight or something. Like it's like a little kid. And I remember my eldest sister being like, don't ever joke like that. That is not funny. That is because it was just like a throwaway comment. But I had that in my head at 6. I definitely think it's tied to purity. I think it's definitely tied to worthiness. And the reason I brought up EDs was because a lot of times we see that with disordered eating, it usually impacts women the most because it is tied to that idea of what I can control, being like perfect, creating some type of perfection in myself. And what can I control like within that? Because I don't feel like I'm in control outside of this. I think the way it manifested for me was like kind of hiding in plain sight. I did everything. I got the grades. I tried to be like the golden child, tried to be like the perfect little preacher's kid, but I had no concept of self. And when you have no concept of self, you mask with perfection, I think, as well. Like, how can I carry the weight of other people's expectations and give them what I think they need while avoiding, again, asking myself that question? But in terms of how it relates to white supremacy, perfectionism was like not the hall pass, but like the key to getting in the house. It was like the key to being a part of the power structure that puts out and doesn't absorb, right? So like in the Caribbean, if you could, within how people were racialized in slavery, if you could attain a certain level of education, you could gain your freedom. Then becomes like, how can I be a perfect student? Like in the US and the Deep South, there is a paper bag test. If you could get to a certain color, you might be able to gain your freedom, especially in Louisiana. They might pay for your schooling and education. You can't really go anywhere else but Paris and then come back to New Orleans, but you might gain something out of that. And I think that's the ticket that's always kind of running in the back of our heads, whether we live in racialized bodies or not. But if you're engaging and surviving white supremacy culture, there's always that thing of like, how can I be, and that plays into the progress as well. How can I be perfect? How can I earn safety? How can I earn rest? Right? How can I earn protection? How can I earn and be worthy of the type of social cachet that's going to keep me out of the fray? And I think for Black women, you recognize that there's very little available to you for that, but there's still that push for perfection because it's like for the few that can break that ceiling or for the few who can cross that line, I'm going to go for it, even though it still doesn't necessarily give you what it is that you thought you were going to get in terms of safety or security or wealth or power.
Right. Or it might just protect you long enough.
It's still conditional. Like you're still towing that line. It's just the illusion of safety.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really exist. I think that's how it, for me at least, is that kind of tied to, am I worthy enough? Can I be perfect enough to earn something here? Whether that's protection, safety, wealth, power, or proxy to those things, love, like all the things that we think that white supremacy is recontextualized to make us believe that you have to earn love, you have to earn happiness, you have to earn rest, you have to earn safety. You don't have to earn any of those things.
No, and that's the radical bit about rest. And one of the things I tell groups that I'm leading as often as I can is, listen, you don't have to earn rest. That is literally not a thing you have to do. You don't have to finish your to-do list. You don't have to be sick or injured or something like that before you can take it. You just deserve rest. And not only that, our bodies are wired to need it. But that nonsense about perfection and that perfectionism in our culture keeps us striving, keeps us grinding, keeps us working harder and harder and harder and harder in order to get the status we think we need to insulate ourselves or to get one half a step farther up the ladder that we didn't invent. And quite frankly, you're never going to get to the top of.
You're not going to get to the ladder is endless, but it's just this idea of one more rung, one more. And it's like, no.
I'll just be there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the illusion that white women have is that we're just one step off the top of the ladder, right?
Yeah.
Now, particularly if you're white and blonde and blue-eyed and thin. Like, I think that really comes into play there, but it happens with all of us. You know, like, oh, I just get thin enough and then I'll get another rung up and then I'll almost be as good as that white man that's at the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
And I think of this image comes back to me because Sonia Renee Taylor talks about it in The Body Is Not an Apology. That's another book.
Yes.
I'll link to it in the show notes because
so good.
Phenomenal book. And she's been a guest on podcasts where she's talks about it really phenomenally too. But she's like, the best choice you have is to get off the ladder. Stop striving. Do less. I mean, that's how I would translate it in terms of being a rest coach, right? Like coaching people to simply make choices to not do as many things. And I'm preaching to myself here, by the way.
Same.
Like, there's no point at which I'm not battling these things too. And I'm very clear that I don't try to be that kind of a guru who's like, look, I have this perfect schedule and I do all these things and I never work too long or too late or do any of that. That's nonsense because it is, again, not the culture we live in. And I'm on the same hamster wheel as y'all. But I'm trying to break that down for you and for me and so that we can build a better world. And that's part of it. Like, if we're just perfect enough, we'll get to the top of the ladder is really the illusion there. And perfect doesn't actually exist.
It doesn't.
And I actually don't. Maybe someday I'll find a white man who can have this conversation. I don't know if there are any. If there is, hey, dear listeners, if you know of one, let me know if I can have that conversation about this. But I don't even think, like, in this country anyway, it was a very small number. It's rich, white, thin, you know, handsome, tall.
Able-bodied,
attractive,
like
straight, you know, like all those things.
It's that illusion.
And again, that's not many of y'all. Let's just be clear. That is a very tiny percentage of y'all, and the rest aren't. And I think that's what part of what, and there's also a striving there, right? To have enough money, to be the better provider, I think also is the thing. But here, we're not here to talk about white men and their problems, but
they have podcasts for that.
They do. Plenty, more than we do. So I'll just
they have far too many podcasts.
They have far too many podcasts. And why don't you I should just email Joe Rogan and tell him that this might be a topic they want to chat about over there.
Take that one.
Take that idea from me because that's not my audience. Anyway. Yeah. So that's what perfectionism is doing, I think. In this context, that's how it's functioning. And these are all cousins, right? All of these ideas are interrelated. And if you read the whole article, there's again, I think there's 15. And this relates very strongly to it. So the next one that I picked is that progress is always more or bigger or better. And this is one that really intertwines with toxic capitalism, I think.
Yeah.
That if you just do more and do it better and just show up and be at least for me, this is how it plays out. If I show up in the room and I'm the most competent at the thing I need to be at, then it'll all be okay. And I've been on a journey because I'm now in my early 50s and I have, apparently this is biological, I have fewer fucks to give now than I used to about these things. Apparently this is something that happens with the hormone depletion in your brain. And your brain just gets tired of filtering and pretending to show up as something that you're not. And so I have less tolerance for this now, but it still is a constant battle in me to try to get myself to show up as my authentic self and say, yeah, these are things I'm good at, but I don't have to do them more, bigger, and better all the time. Or the thing that I do in my business has to be more, bigger, and better all the time. Maybe it needs to be the simplest, tiniest thing, and that actually is easy. Why don't we try easy
Why don't we try
some
easy?
of the time? And that's okay, but that's not what our culture teaches us.
Ease is not a bad thing. Easy is not a bad thing. It's very interesting how this idea of progress happening in the superlative, like you were saying, the most, the best, the biggest. It's very interesting because you have to then question, like, what does that do to a person? If you take it all the way down from the macro down to the micro, like, it makes you feel like you're never doing enough. It makes you feel like there's always more that you could be doing. It makes you feel like in your business, we do this now where look at all of these publicly traded tech companies where it's like we added more followers, we got more subscribers, we did more. And it's like that's not actually how things are supposed to. Did the quality get better? No. Never that. Did the service get better? No. That habit teaches us to measure in metrics that are not necessarily good for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And this is something that struck me this time reading that, and I've read this dozens of times. But thinking about this concept is that if we're doing more, bigger, better all the time, we never go deeper. We never get richer. We never make better connections, or whatever the thing is that we really want to do. We get wider but not deeper is what ends up happening a lot of the time. And you brought up the example of tech companies. One of the things that, and I'm guilty of it even in my tiny little business, but like businesses tend to do is sprawl, and I feel like software is a really good example of that because it often will try to do 100 more things. Like we had a really good video conferencing package, let's say, let's say you were really good video conferencing, and now we're going to add 1,000 more widgets.
Nobody asked for that.
No one asks for it. And they're like, oh, but we'll be the all-in-one thing. And that literally just isn't possible. You can't do 100 things well.
You can't,
but why don't you focus? I think that the tech companies and the businesses in general that do the best are the ones that focus the most. You can even play that out in your local restaurant. You don't want to go to the restaurant that has a 72-page menu because they're not doing all those things well.
They're not.
It's not possible. There's no line cooks alive who can make, 100 different dishes really well every single day. They probably have 5 of those things that they do really well, and that should be their menu, right?
Can I give an example of this?
Sure, go for it.
I took a trip with my sisters to London a couple years ago, and we stopped in this little Italian restaurant, and we were so hangry. We were beyond hunger. We were hangry. The hormones were raging. We just needed food in our bellies. And we get in there, and it's a tiny little restaurant. And the host is also one of the chefs. And he was like, oh man, we're about to start dinner service in like 30, 40 minutes. Even though it looks empty in there, they're like, we have tables set for people. Do you think we can get you in and out in 40 minutes? Us being Americans, us getting, Southwest egg rolls from Chili's, 40 minutes is a long time. I was like, we'll be out of here before that. And so we were sitting like kind of fuming, like waiting for this food. And where I was sitting, I could see the chefs and I could see them like preparing the food and all of the other stuff. But I was still like the anticipation. I was like, I'm hungry. Food got there. Best food I've ever had in my life. It was so gorgeous. The depth of flavor, everything was like, and I think it took maybe 30 minutes. But the reason I brought that up is just like that menu was like an index card size. It was not a huge, long list of things that they do. We do a few things well. This is what we can offer you. We're not trying to be, we're not trying to be your local buffet that has 600 different things at it, right? This is what we do well. And we had an experience because of that versus if we'd gone somewhere else and it was just like kind of fast casual, I'd have been like, okay, that was great. I didn't really taste it. There was really no experience related to it, but like it's done. And I think about that a lot. But in terms of the progress is always more, bigger, better, I also think in terms of the moment that we're in politically and how we all feel the need for big sweeping changes without recognizing that progress is wholly incremental over long periods of time. But we're like, no, we want to be out of this bad situation now. Let's reverse everything now. And the level of coalition building and education and like work it takes from us, because there's no one else coming to save us, but from us, is going to be in those small steps and small wins. And there's something beautiful about that. But oftentimes we think, I'm sure you've had this happen with clients as well. We discount the small. We discount the little wins. We discount the small moments. We discount all of that and say, that's not big enough. I didn't make enough progress. Like, we don't know how to measure.
Yeah. The incremental, the small, or celebrating the small wins is another way to think of that. Something that comes up with clients all the time is like, well, this month I only did my yoga practice 3 times and went to the gym 4 times and did this, this litany of rest practices, right? And somehow even rest, we have to do it more, bigger, better, and more expensively because it's so wrapped up in the wellness industrial complex. That's a whole other podcast, friends, but I'll get there eventually. Whole other podcast and I'll get there, I promise. So probably tomorrow, maybe even, who knows? But like that whole notion that everything has to be done bigger, better, more. And what I often try to do, and I know you do the same, is no, what are the tiny things you need to do for yourself today? It doesn't actually have to be that. Or the small but difficult thing to do is simply to make simpler choices about how you schedule yourself. That's really the recipe for more rest. But no one wants to hear that. Everybody wants to be the bath bomb to be the answer. Everybody wants the gym membership to be the answer. And I'm not against bath bombs or gym memberships. I like
they're a part of it.
They're a part of it. Those are things, but
not all of it.
But it's certainly not all of it. And it won't solve all of that problem around rest and our almost addiction to achievement in that external way, I think.
Constantly optimizing, constantly trying to be, 1% better every day. There's nothing wrong with wanting to improve. There is something wrong with thinking that only in improvement can I be happy. Only in improvement can I find love. You don't have to constantly be seeking, striving, or any of those things to earn love. You don't have to earn. And there's this idea that's tied to our achievement. It's not achievement from a place of curiosity to be like, hey, could I do this? Can I do this? Is this possible for me? If I don't do this, no one will love me. Yeah. If I don't do this, then I'm not going to have, my mother's respect. If I don't do this, I'm not going to find someone who wants to marry. That's no.
And I feel like this dynamic is probably a part of what leads to the next piece, which is individualism, and particularly the I'm the only one kind of idea. I'm the only one who can possibly do fill in the blank in your context, in your setting, in your job, in your church, in your family, whatever, which is such a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you think you're the only one and then you continue to do the thing that you think you're the only one who can do it, no one else is ever going to learn how to do it, let me tell you. I promise you that. And I also get it. Teaching people to do the thing that you're really good at is hard, and it takes longer than doing it yourself in the beginning, especially. Yeah. But that doesn't mean someone else can't do the thing. So why don't you let a little bit of that, let them kind of fool around with it and mess it up for a while and find their own way.
Full circle moment when we were talking earlier about church mothers and like the one who did the function until she was 80 and then she's like, I can't do it anymore. And then it doesn't happen. I don't know how I got into it, but I was like, I found my dad's like Aunt Joyce. She was the type of lady who just was a teacher. She was an educator. She did so much in the community. And she started this program for Black girls in San Antonio to have a debut for debutantes. And so I was super into it when I was like 14, 15 and like low-key kind of forced my sisters to do it because I was like, I can't do it yet, so you have to. And then my time came. And it was funny watching these older Black women with all these ideas of the way that they used to do things. And this is the box step. This is the dance that we do. This is when this happens in the program, right? But nobody wrote anything down. And nobody opened up to letting anyone else do it. And as they aged and a lot of them passed, it was, well, who the hell is going to do it now?
Nobody.
We don't document those practices. We don't want to ask that rugged individualism, which is a lie, by the way. It's a myth. But it sounds nice and it sells Jeeps and a bunch of other SUVs, F-150s.
Jeans. Don't forget jeans.
Don't forget the Levi's. It sells denim. It makes it seem so cool to be the rugged individual, but it's just not true.
No.
We need people. We need people to help us. We need to be able to receive help. And I'm curious to know, especially having worked with faith-related organizations, have you ever come into a situation where a person was able to lead community, but was not able to like be in community and ask for help? Because that's a constant thing that comes up for me. And it's fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think probably in every, and I don't know all of those situations intimately, but I'm sure that's what's happening with almost all of those church mothers, or to some degree, probably church fathers too, who are, I think of the usher board, right?
Yeah.
Like those are usually men, and they also have their own thing and ways of doing things that aren't generally very good at being inclusive of younger people or things like that. Yeah. For a long time, I actually taught and trained people around youth and young adult ministry, and convincing people that they didn't necessarily need a youth group or some big program. What they needed was to mentor young people and be in community with younger people.
Yeah.
That's actually all you need to do. And the learning will happen from there. And that's, that's not just learning jobs. That's like sharing how your faith journey has gone, or sharing whatever important thing. We're using the language of faith, but like you can extrapolate that to anything. Like I'm telling you about my life, or the meaning I've made in my life. But you can just do that while you're preparing the dinner, while you're handing out the bulletins, while you're doing all the things that need to be done, or for that matter, when you're just sitting back having a cup of coffee later.
Yes.
Or hanging out some other time during the week with these people that you've come to know and love and care about. And those conversations will and can and do happen. And that's way more effective, I think. It's way more effective at building community. It's way better at building people's faith. It's way better at building a team and letting people teach each other how to do a thing, rather than individualistically saying you must learn to do this particular job and do your thing well.
All on your own. And it's like a fun story to be able to tell people, but it's not reality. You need people. We all need people. We need help. When you go from like pet to threat as a Black girl of like, oh my God, she's so cute, she's so smart, blah, blah, blah. But then, oh no, she's asking questions. We don't like that. That kind of like pipeline. I think you get so used to kind of carrying everything on your own in terms of whatever dream it is that you have, or whatever thing that it is you're trying to build. Like, I got to do it on my own, because I know more than likely I'm not going to get that bank loan. More than likely I'm not going to get that capital. More than likely I'm not going to get, whatever. So I have to find those alternative means. And sometimes you translate that into, I have to do it all on my own, but that doesn't exist. That paradigm doesn't exist, and it's not sustainable. It takes people to help you with your business. It takes people to help you with whatever your community outreach is. It takes people to create a congregation. It takes people. This is like a thing I try and lead people to. You can't force it, but lead people to with their own rest practice. Is this the same way that therapists ask that question? What do you need? What's going on? What do you need? What do you like? What help do you want right now? Leading to the understanding that, like, in making those simpler choices and taking away those things so that it's easier for you to care for yourself, you realize how deeply you need to be in community with other folks. You need other people. Like, you're able to rest when it goes beyond just an individual thing, but to a collective thing of like, oh, I Perhaps you need like childcare that you could get if you were in deeper community with folks. Perhaps it's help with a chronic illness, whatever those things may be that become easier to manage. Those circumstances become easier to manage with people. But oftentimes we want community around us. We don't want to be in community. We want people around us to help carry our circumstances, but then we don't want to be inconvenienced with anybody else's. And that's not how that works. But I think that individualism piece is key, because if you think it can only be you, if you think that like you're the only person to get something done, that you have to carry this all on your back, you're not going to get as, what is it? If you want to go quick, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with people, something like that. I might have butchered that. I might have butchered that.
And I'm not sure what the saying is, so I'm not helpful.
I think it was something like that. If you want to go quickly, go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go with people. You have to take folks with you. You have to let people take you with them. And I just think those are those three things: the perfectionism, the progress is always more, bigger, better, and individualism. They're all tied together. And I just think it's really important because all three of them, the antithesis starts with vulnerability. Can I show my imperfection and still be worthy? Can I celebrate something smaller instead of something bigger and still be seen as in progress or doing something? Can I let down my guard around like carrying everything and show people what it is that I'm working towards or working on, or where I need help, and let people help?
Yeah. If we were at church, I would be shouting and hollering and shouting amen at that. I mean, I don't want to like yell into the microphone and blast everyone's ears out, but like that is it. And I'm going to be reflecting on that idea of vulnerability.
Because white supremacy is about projecting that image of invulnerability.
Right.
Like nothing can penetrate this, nothing can shift this. This is perfection. And when you open to the other side of that, but whoever said that being vulnerable was a bad thing? Whoever created the notion that vulnerability, being open with your imperfection, being in community with people, and that some of the other ones that I'm thinking of, like the oral tradition of communicating, like none of these things are bad. They're just different.
Right. And I'm wondering if here, this conversation about vulnerability, and I think there's a few other threads from earlier in our conversation, if we're answering another question that I want to answer, which is, if not that, then what? Like, what's the vision for the, one of the ways, sometimes I ask the question, so what is your vision for a well-rested world? What does that world look like? Because the times in which we're in, like just fighting back against what we don't want is not going to sustain us.
Mm-mm.
We have to have at least tiny little pieces of a vision, and we're probably not going to have the whole thing. That's hard to see. But what are the tiny threads? And I think a world in which you can show up and be vulnerable and ask for what you need without a sense of fear and shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I really experienced this, and I've written about this on my Substack when I was doing the crowdfunding to help fund the professional launch of this podcast. And this was extremely difficult for me. Number one, vulnerability is not my strong suit. I don't like it. I want to project invulnerability at all the time. I want to be the most competent, the best, the most with it, the least sick. And of course, then you can hear the rattliness, I'm sure, in my voice, friends, like that. I've been a little rattly today because I've been fighting a cold this past week, right as I'm trying to record the first 3 episodes of this podcast, of course. Universe is so funny that way. But when I was crowdfunding, I had to really get my stuff together in a way that I hadn't before, because I don't like asking for help. And I especially don't like asking for help in the form of money. Because and that's a cultural thing. That is stuff from my own family system, baggage I have from my own family stuff, and how I've, what I've turned that into in my own life. And what I learned is that asking for what you need is actually like deeply joyful. Because you know what? You think you're going to get rejected. And sometimes that happened. Like some people told me no. But you know what? By and large, people, and no one said, no, don't do your podcast. Some people said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't afford it right now. That happened. But it was like, but are there other ways I can support you? Was usually the next question. And so it was deeply joyful. I got to connect. I had so many long phone and Zoom conversations with people I hadn't connected with in a long time, who were both willing to give me money and a lot of time and talk to like really beloved friends and colleagues who wanted like crazy to support me. We mostly didn't talk about the podcast. We talked about our lives and whatever else was going on and, you know, maybe told some funny stories about our past. And it was just unbelievable joy. And why can't we have more of that? If asking for what we need brings more of that, yes, please. I will suck up the yucky feelings or the shame that starts welling up that I'm asking for stuff for more of that every single day. And for that matter, this is a very US thing. Like in other more communal cultures, asking for what you need is just the standard. Like there's no shame involved. You just do it. In Western cultures where like offering help through the government or other people is more standard, you know, where it's like, oh, of course you had a baby. You need a whole year off to adjust to having that baby. And here we're going to give you the help you need in order to do that. It's just a given that we're going to do that because we know this is bigger than you. Like this taking care of this tiny human is a much bigger project than what you can handle on your own. And that's not saying anything bad about you. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And we know that you probably we don't have the extended families in our own houses anymore, the way that used to be that helped with all of the baby taking or baby caretaking or whatever it was. So I think that's a hint, like vulnerability, yes. Asking for what you need, yes. That's part of the vision. What would you add to that?
Oh, that's so good. And I just want to, not even a tangent, I just want to go back to seeing your emails when you were doing your crowdfunding campaign healed something in me, friend. Like that was because there was another event like 2 years ago that happened where I was like, wait, I could just ask people for help. What? Like, it's so simple. And yet seeing you go through it, and I remember reading the one where you're kind of like halfway through it and you were really feeling uncomfortable, but you're like, I'm gonna push through this thing anyways. It really healed something in me because I was like, one, you could just ask for help. And had you not done the crowdfunding, had you not sent that email, I wouldn't have applied to a program here locally that was so helpful for me, that like really helped me get over some money stuff at one of our local banks that is like a huge business lender. I still carried the I help other people, nobody helps me narrative. But just that simple like email, the simple practice of you showing up and allowing people to see you show up and ask. When we do these things for ourselves, even if it's in greater context of helping other people, they act as permission slips for other people to do the same. So I just wanted to say thank you off the bat. I don't think I told you that yet. And I didn't mean to like surprise you on the podcast. I was like, no, I forgot to tell you
that's a good surprise. That's good.
It was just so great. I was just like, oh, you just ask for help. Like, why is that concept so? We know why. Why is that concept?
We know why. We just enumerated why it's so damn hard in our culture.
So hard. But I'm so proud of you that you did it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm honestly proud of me because that is such a huge thing for me to do. Yeah. And it was so hard, like all of the time, and not just in the middle. But the middle is the worst because you're getting like a lot of radio silence, just sort of how launches go in general. And like people really listen in the beginning, and then there's a long middle, and you get a little trickle. You get, in terms of the crowdfunding, you get, here's a little gift here, a gift there. And then you're like, well, I hope someone's stepping up in the last 3 days. Anybody out there?
Else?
And then the temptation, and I've done it with other kinds of launches, like in the business, where I just sort of give up. Like
I've done that so much.
Quit my own launch.
I quiet quit. Where I'm like, oh, nobody wants this. Never mind. It never existed. Don't ever worry about it.
They don't need to hear anymore.
Delete the page. Delete the page.
Delete the page. Don't talk about it or whatever. And I even like. This is a small thing, but I did a last launch of my community recently, doing it very half-assed, let me be clear, because I didn't have the time And I'm like, I just need to move on to the next thing, but I'm going to at least try to get make a little bit of something out of this for now.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping for 4. I had 1 new person sign up for it in that time. When I began it, I said, that's going to be fine. If no one does it, that's fine. That'll affirm that I need to move on to the next thing, which it did. But I put it in an email. And it's just in an email. It's one, not even a sentence, but it's like, hey, you know what? We got, just so people knew, 1 person signed up for that thing in that launch. Just so you know the truth of the matter. This is what happened in that. And this is what, and I didn't make it negative. It was like, hey, I got 1 new person and here's what's next. I didn't make a big deal out, but I'm also not hiding it.
And I love that transparency. And I think that's what I would say about if I could change this into a world where, one, we could rest equitably, like the people who do some of the most, not just physically backbreaking labor, but like the emotional labor of keeping a lot of us grounded to get the care that they need. I would really want a space for transparent communication, for transparency in how we take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, have you ever seen those like Reddit threads where someone's like, oh, I didn't know I needed to shower like this, or something about a grooming habit or something like that. And it's like fun. It's funny in the moment because it's like, how did you not know? But no one told them. No one taught them.
Right.
And the same thing happens with rest. And the same thing happens with how we take care of ourselves. And the same thing happened like healthcare. I was signing up for healthcare and I was asking questions I never asked in years prior. And a lot of friends and family were like, girl, I have no idea what that means. I've never heard that term before. What are you talking about? And I was like, oh, so I'm not dumb. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I'm not stupid. This is just madness. But
right.
Transparency and communication in terms of what we need, people feeling like they can communicate what they need. I saw a thread where someone was talking about people who do like home service jobs. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in a house, right? And of course, there's like the stories you expect that are madness. But this one person was like, you know what? It's not really crazy. It's just that people really need someone to share their life with. And so oftentimes they just kind of tell me everything. What's going on with their families, whether it's been a lonely year or not, like that type of thing. And we need opportunities for people to, the same way that therapists ask that question, we need spaces where we're asking those questions of one another. What do you need? What do you need at work? What do you need to get your work done? What accommodations do you need to get your work done? What do you need in this chapter of your life? What do you want? What type of care would be helpful for you as you go through this? That level of like transparency and vulnerability and how we talk with one another, talk to one another, and a sense of growing up on military installations. You just knew where everybody lived. You knew where everybody was. There was a real sense of a neighborhood, a real sense of, even though we did not agree on everything, there was this shared experience of being like shipped around the world and figuring things out and making friends and finding people that felt like family, even though you weren't related. There isn't really that. There really isn't that sense of neighborliness anymore.
Agreed. And I also want to loop back to something you said pretty briefly, but like people's labor being honored equitably and not discounting the back-breaking labor that people do for very little money in our culture, whether that's healthcare workers, especially home health people who make pennies,
nothing,
to do the really important work of caring for our elders or our sick children or us, whoever, or just someone recovering after a surgery or whatever the case may be, like those kinds of jobs, or back-breaking work on a construction site that's roofing a house, which is so dangerous.
Working on an oil rig.
On an oil rig, that's a great example. Like these incredible things, or picking our lettuce and our
farm
strawberries,
child care workers, healthcare workers, the people. people who are in some level of service and care to our planet, to our communities, to like our world at large. There's so much care that they don't receive that they do need. They really do need. And if I could, if I got the Thanos and I got the gauntlet and I could like fix things, childcare would be everywhere. Go to the movie theater, there's a place where you can check in your kid. Go to the grocery store, there's a place where you can check in. There would be everywhere. Teachers would get paid like NFL dollars, honestly. So many people, like the livable wage I would be like, it's $40 an hour. What are you talking about?
Right.
We just need to take better care of each other. And it's impossible to start that process if we don't take better care of ourselves first, if we don't learn how to build that inwardly first.
Yeah. I want to close with some relatively straightforward questions of you. And just as a kind of turning from this big vision-y stuff, which we were just doing, to a little bit more simple and practical, what are the first steps we need to take toward that vision? Because you're right, we're not Thanos, we're not, Harry Potter with our magic wand, we're not whatever, right? We can't, that's not going to happen. So what is one simple way that you rest, or maybe suggest that people rest?
I saw this thing about Toni Morrison's creative process and how she would get coffee and wait for sunrise to come through. And that was like enough for her to be like, okay, I can go into writing. I found, especially as the weather is changing, it's not like 3,000 degrees outside here, just like seeing either sunrise or sunset, that color shift outside, a couple minutes with some tea, or I'm journaling, or I'm just outside looking at the birds in the trees, but just enough time to wonder. Whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's not a long time commitment, is so restorative to me. So like finding some time or somewhere in your day where you can give yourself space enough to just exhale and be. It doesn't have to be in your calendar. It doesn't have to accomplish a goal. It doesn't have to have an outcome. Just be. That's where I would start.
I like that. And so, this might be one and the same, but what is a simple way that you resist?
Oh,
all the toxic nonsense we've described.
Because there's so many things that infuriate me. And that feeling comes up. I feel that feeling. I feel the anger or the rage. And then I look at what's the deeper way to respond to this. I let myself react, and then I ask myself about response. And that's often slower. It takes me more time, which I think annoys people because they're like, no, but we want to know your reaction to this right now. And I'm like, I initially feel this, but I think I need more time with this. I would like to read more about this. I have questions about that. It's not immediately going into a certain, sure reaction. I know what I feel, but I'm going to take my time with a better response to it.
I love that. That is actually a resistance, I think, to the things we've named already, but also one of the things in there that I almost pulled was sense of urgency is another habit, that a part of grind culture and white supremacy that fuels all of this nonsense about, or that keeps us from resting. And you've just named that so well that you're like, no, I'm going to actually think about this instead of giving you the answer you think you need now.
A thoughtful response versus a quick reaction.
Yeah. Or I think for my white-bodied friends and listeners out there, like if something makes us uncomfortable because we don't do well with discomfort, pausing and saying, why am I uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Why am I uncomfortable right now? And if that means that you need to leave the situation and have that conversation with yourself, or let yourself feel your feelings or whatever, like you're just saying, pausing, feeling my feelings, and then I'm going to be thoughtful about this decision and ask, and just say, I'm going to take more time. Not even ask for permission, just taking more time. And that's okay. Just take more time. Because time is your friend, not your enemy, believe it or not.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So I like to call, you've heard this already today, I like to call my listeners and community members rest rebels.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were going to write a little note to them today or speak a little note to them today, dear rest rebels, what would you like to say to them?
Dear rest rebels, it is safe for you to rest. It is safe for you to choose yourself. It's safe for you to enjoy yourself. That's what I would say.
I love that, especially the emphasis on the word safe there, because I think you've nailed something that it is often not safe, or it doesn't feel safe for us to rest. That's why we don't do it. Yeah, especially in this culture that's pushing all the time, right? So what is an organization that's doing some good work in the world that you'd like to highlight and invite us to support as a thank you for you coming here today and giving your time and having this lovely conversation with me? I'd love to give them a small donation as well. And I'm going to put this on my podcast website, like everybody's recommendations over time.
When I came into, I had one where I was like, oh, for sure. But this popped into my head right as you asked the question, was actually the YWCA.
Oh, okay.
Like their tagline is to end racism. Like they're doing some incredible work right now.
Yeah.
I don't think that they get enough love. I know like the YMCA is like going to the gym, but the YWCA is like, we're ending racism. And it's like, oh, okay, cool, guess. And they do so much around helping mothers and kids, providing childcare, providing resources. I think this is doing incredible work. And then one that's a local favorite for me is the Southwest Workers Union. So much education and advocacy. They recently updated their building that took a couple of years, and they do a lot of outreach, a lot of education, particularly about knowing your rights. They just do really great work. I'm really proud of them. I would shout out the YWCA and the Southwest Workers Union.
I love those. Well, we'll add those. I will give a little donation to each of those and highlight those on our website and in the show notes and all of that good stuff.
Perfect.
So do you have anything new coming up, and how can people find you?
You can find me online. It's usually at the Jordan Maney on YouTube, on Instagram and TikTok. I usually kind of live on one of those platforms, and also Substack. I think it's at the Jordan Maney as well. The Rest Lab Report, where I just kind of give the behind the scenes of the work that I'm doing. But if you're interested in understanding rest for reinvention, rest that is steeped in your joy, come on down to the Rest Lab 101. It's my masterclass where we kind of do a deeper dive into a lot of these concepts and topics and give you all a framework to work with and go over the radical rest method, which is talking about simplicity. It's so simple, but it really can help shift you into a state of restfulness a lot faster than kind of going from frazzled, and nervous system fried, and then trying to rest, but like really kind of helping you like drop in and relax some. So those are the things I got going on.
I think that sounds fabulous. So thank you for being here, Jordan. I always am overjoyed to have conversations with you, and this was so juicy and delicious. Yep. Quite the meal that we just had. That was so good. And I could do this again anytime and for 5 more hours, but
I got to have you on mine now. We have to go back and forth.
That can be a thing as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And before we go, I want to give you your flowers. Thank you for creating this space. Thank you for holding people through the transition of learning to better take care of themselves on every plane, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, social. I just really appreciate all that you do and the way that you make it look effortless, the way that you show up for this work and show up for yourself. I know it's not, but you make it look really effortless. And I'm super proud of you for just continuing to carry this mantle and move forward with it, because it's going to help and has helped so many people.
And I so deeply appreciate that, and appreciate you and having a sister in this work, and having found each other through that Becky Mollenkamp's podcast. And I'll find that podcast and I'll drop it in the show notes too, because it should also get its flowers, quite frankly. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
finding, right. She's so great at creating community, and she's
So good at it.
I wouldn't be doing this podcast, I don't think, even without her.
Her,
So,
no,
yeah.
she really, she's another person who does not give herself enough credit. But I just wanted to say thank you, and that I see you, and I'm super freaking proud of you and grateful for you.
Yes.
And your work.
And likewise, I'm grateful for your work as well. And I hope that we do get to just come back and forth on each other's podcasts and finding more room for collaboration. So thanks so much. And Rest Rebels, this isn't the last you've heard from the Jordan Maney.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Remember, rest is not a retreat from the work we do in the world. It is the work. So if you're ready to rest and resist, here's what to do next. If you know someone who's running on empty, please share it with them. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss a single episode. Rate and review us so that other radicals can find us. Consider joining us on Substack at defythetrend.substack.com, where you'll find bonus content, tips for everyday living, community connection, and resources to keep you grounded. Radicals, remember, you are worthy of rest.